Thank you for inviting us, Amber, and for the introductions. Good morning and good afternoon to you, wherever you may be as you tune in today. And thank you for joining us. Just a bit more about my colleague, Maritza, and I, and what we do at our office. We help small and medium-sized organizations with a proven, effective, and affordable solution for planning, managing, measuring, and also engaging everyone in the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts to drive a more inclusive workplace so that all team members can belong and be productive. So we do have experience with hundreds of organizations of all types, not just public and private companies, but also organizations that are nonprofits in education or in the government as well. We'll answer as many questions as we can during the webinar, so please feel free to put them in the Q&A. And also we can answer afterwards if you provide your email address, or if you reach out to us, you can reach out to us always at dei@ouroffice.io. And you can also see our smiley faces here and our email addresses and what we do here at our office also on this slide that is up right now. So let's get started, shall we, Maritza? Would you like to get us started?
Yes. Sure, Sonya. Today, it's more difficult than ever for small and medium-sized enterprises, which we call SMEs, to compete for talent, customers, and investment dollars. Over half of the workforce is planning on leaving their jobs, and about 80% of them prioritize inclusion and belonging. While there's a lot of data about the positive impacts of DE&I, most of the data, tools, and approaches are geared towards larger organizations with expertise and budget.
That's right. So today we want to focus on the state of workplace inclusion in small and medium enterprises, or SMEs. These are organizations that have less than 2,500 employees, and this really represents over 99% of all employers in the United States. So it's most of us. And so let's talk about the challenges first, and then share the insights from this first of our workplace inclusion study that focused on SMEs. And then at the end also, we'll talk about the recommendations, as you can see on this topic list. Okay, so let's talk about the challenges, regardless of their industry or other specifics. There seems to be one key challenge in common, and that's finding the right people and keeping them. So here are the three key reasons on this slide here as to why this is even harder for SMEs to do compared to the larger organizations, right? So the first thing here is, because of the uncertainties today, there's a natural just flight for safety, right? Which means more employees than ever before are opting for larger organizations where they feel they may be safe, from the impacts of economic uncertainties and other business challenges like inflation and supply chain issues. The next couple of things also actually applies to bigger organizations, and we certainly have clients that have more than 2,500 employees. There's a couple of other reasons why this is harder than ever. There is a huge increase that I don't hear people talk about too much in the number of just companies being started since the pandemic. So this is to the tune of 50% more companies are being created annually compared to 2019, before the pandemic. This means there's more competition for people to hire. It also creates a retention issue, as current employees have more choices to go to these newer companies or organizations. And then it also seems that these new generations of millennials and Gen Zers, who are already over 50% of the workforce, are much more likely to start their own new businesses. So, which again, you're not just competing with other organizations, but these employees that decide to go off and maybe start their own thing. So it decreases the number of people in the workplace. So hopefully this is what we hear out there, and hopefully this helps shed a little bit more light on why you're having the challenges that you're having. There's really a few forces at work here. And then we talk about, well, why is it, so critical to have workplace inclusion? On this slide, we talk about a few stats. There's many more. But really, workplace inclusion is critical in this employee retention risk that we were just talking about. We see that there's about 50% drop in employee retention risk when you have a more inclusive workplace. That also then correlates with higher net promoter score. When you ask an organization, an employee, whether they would recommend their organization as a good employer, this is really the net promoter score is measuring that, right? And then in terms of job performance, not only people say, stay at your organization and say good things, but they also, have better job performance, about 56% higher job performance. So all good reasons. There's much more data about this, but this is really just the beginnings of talking about why this is so critical. We all know it's important. We all know we have this challenge, but hopefully this gives a little bit more perspective. So now, Maritza, let's talk about the insights from our survey of SMEs. Could you please share, some of the profile of the respondents so that everybody knows who we talked to and who was involved in this study?
Certainly. As you can see from the slide, here's the profile of the respondents by their organizational size. Nearly half of them are 100 to 500, employees. A quarter have less than 100 employees. Another quarter have about 500 to 2,500 employees.
Yeah, and as you can see, there are also organizations that have more employees, thousands of employees, as you can see on this slide. So it is about 20% or so had actually more. So it's a good balanced distribution. It's kind of reflective of basically, the general workforce. But the good thing is that the small organizations are well represented. You want to talk about the industries a little bit?
Yes, the industries that were represented. If we could, yes, no, thank you. Close to 40 industries are represented. About a quarter are nonprofits. 15% are in tech. Another 15 in professional services. And then other sectors represented are financial services, advertising, utilities, and government.
Yeah, the really detailed data shows there's like almost, I think, when we last counted, around 40 industries represented, certainly including, for example, education, healthcare, and others that are not included, haven't been written out here. But you can see, again, a good representation from across industries as well. So now let's find out, if DEI is really important to these organizations, right? So the first question we asked was, how important is DEI to you? And what we found here, you can see a good majority, almost 56%, said yes. In their organization, most people agree that DEI is important to them. About a third, about 33%, said that some people in the organization agree it's important. There was a very small percentage here that we can't even see, is maybe 1 or 2% said that no, most people don't agree that it's important. And so it's a very small percentage. And then, of course, it's a good representation of people that just weren't sure how their organization thinks about importance of DEI. So again, we can see if we really add up these numbers, there's a good, close to 90% of all organizations believe that most, or at least some of the people in the organization believe that DEI is important. But we all know that there's challenges, right? And especially with smaller organizations, not enough resources, spread very thin. We deal with that mostly. We're very focused on that. So, we see most organizations that when they come to us, they say that, it's important, they want to do something about it, but they just don't have the resources. And so hopefully the rest of this will help you. If you don't have any resources, you want to do this on your own, Also, of course, we're always here to talk with you if you actually need some help to show how affordable it actually can be if you put your mind to it and if you know where to start and you don't waste any resources. So with that, let's just get into the meat of this conversation then. The first question, and by the way, on all of these slides, you will see two symbols. So I want to orient you to this first, okay? So the light bulb is kind of the nugget from this slide that from this data that you'll be seeing that you can take away, right? So you want to focus on that. And then kind of the lightning bolt, if you will, the one below it here, the yellow symbol, is kind of an insight, right? Beyond just what the data says. And it often includes things that we have actually seen with our customers from our own conversations. I see that there's a question: did your survey include positions, role of respondents within their SME organizations? I imagine C-suite execs would respond differently than any entry-level professionals. Yes, it did. We are not sharing all of the information here because it's quite extensive. But yes, thank you for asking that question. Our target was senior HR leaders and DEI leaders and C-suite. So that was by design. This went to those types of roles, and we do have the split. But again, here we're just sharing what we can. But that's an excellent question. Thank you. And please continue to ask questions. Please put it in the Q&A. We'll be monitoring as we go. So on this one, we asked about commitment and strategy. It starts with leadership commitment. And you can see vast majority of CEOs have advocated for DEI. 90% say they have personally done so. And but the thing that comes out here is that less than 2/3 have a documented DEI strategy. So the other 37% or so that you can see here are yet to develop a DEI plan. And we know that, like anything else in business, how can you get anything done if you don't have a plan? Right? When you think about that for a moment, DEI is no different from trying to improve the top line, the bottom line, safety, quality, all the other things we look for in businesses. And so for DEI to get started without having a plan, frankly, is just setting yourself up for not being fully successful. So that's what this data shows you. Now, in terms of budget and then just the leadership, if you have leadership for DEI, this is obviously a challenge that's across the board, especially for small and medium organizations. So the bottom line that we found out here is that over half haven't allocated DEI budget, and only 1/3 have an assigned DEI lead or equivalent. So really what we find, again, with our customers too, is that what happens is if you don't allocate, some budget, right? If it's just something that everybody's supposed to do voluntarily or on the side, you'll just end up frustrating your leadership or those who are championing it or trying to do it. And again, it doesn't have to be that hard. It doesn't have to be unaffordable. There's a lot of good solutions emerging. There's technology. There's kind of shared professional expertise, the kind of things that organizations like us and many others may provide. So we encourage you to look into that because it is difficult. There's nothing in business you can improve without budget. And some budget needs to be allocated, even if it's small initially. And then, as you see ROI, and, with our customers, we see ROI fairly quickly, then you can assign more budget to it, right? Just start with something. And then you can make progress from there. Okay. Now let's talk about measuring and tracking. And here's where, I know, Marissa, you have great experience of specific stories from customers that you can also share here anonymously. Just to show you the data first, here is, we see that many, even small, medium organizations do a good amount of DEI training, about 2/3, 63%. They said they provide DEI training to their managers, but only 1 in 5 task, measure, and incentivize those leaders who've been trained with any specific goals. Again, I would ask you to reflect on other areas of business that you're involved in, or any other goals you have. If you don't measure, if you don't task people towards that, just training people is going to have limited results, and oftentimes, disappointing results. Again, I know, Marissa, you have some stories, so do you want to share something in that regard?
Yeah, this slide brings me to a client that wanted to focus on diversity hiring, but with the data, as you said, we were tracking and collecting data monthly. We discovered that there was a bigger concern within their internal team, specifically with performance reviews and promotions. And this awareness to the leadership team and management team led to decisions that improved diversity at the higher levels within the organization, and it also helped with retention and hiring.
Yeah, that's a great example, right? It's just the devil is in the details, and there's no, no shortcut, like, again, the other parts of business. And that's an excellent example of where they were able to really spend their resources. A lot of times when people say they don't have enough resources, is because the resources are not, some of it is wasted, right? Where you don't have a more structured approach to it. You're spending money on training and different things, and those are all good things to do, only they can't do just by themselves, right? You can't see really the kind of outcomes you want, but just providing some training alone. So now let's switch gears and talk about employee surveys. This is something else that most everybody, or the majority anyway, do. So again, very good thing to do. 72% in our study said that they have conducted an employee survey in the last 12 months. But again, only about 38%, about 62% only said that they've generated actions, and 38% have not generated any actions from them yet. So it's great to do, again, at least annual surveys more often. Some organizations are doing it more often, quarterly or biannually. But you have to be very careful, because I want to say it's almost better not to do one if you're not going to act upon it, because then it creates quite a bit of dissatisfaction and frustration, because now you're asking people but not acting upon it, and they think that their time has been wasted. The organization doesn't care. It kind of highlights the issues more than it solves anything if you're not going to have formal actions. And sometimes organizations say we have actions, we just the employees don't know. Well, employees only know what you tell them. So it is important to also then communicate if you have actions. But this is, again, we're asking the leaders, and it turns out that about 40% of them almost did not have any formal actions generated after the survey. Again, Marissa, I know that you come across this a lot as well.
I know I have, especially smaller organizations like nonprofits. They'll do the survey, but then there's no follow-up actions. And as you said, Sonya, it really does create this resentment and dissatisfaction and trust, a lack of trust. And we went through the exercise of doing this, and then there's no follow-up. I think that with our office, our project management module helps with tracking all of these actions. Once you have created and developed a plan, you have specific actions, and it's a project management tool that tracks the deadlines and assigns certain actions to people. And it's a great way of showing progress. And I think that this is good for employees, because employees can see that D&I really matters and something's being it's taken seriously, and they can see the progress themselves.
Yeah, and that's where technology comes in, right? I know that sometimes we are just inundated with maybe with all kinds of tools and software and so on, and technology. Lives are just oversaturated sometimes with technology, but it really is important because it can really accelerate. I mean, the same reasons why we use technology for tracking, progress or actions and different aspects of business and our personal lives even, is why it's important to use it also for DEI, not by itself ever. Like in our case, we always provide a D&I advisor like Maritza, who of course, so you have a lot of experience with this, helping organizations, with using the technology to just facilitate things. And so assigning actions, tracking the progress, and giving visibility to everything that the organization is doing is frankly not that hard to do with a simple tool. And so again, we encourage you to think about that as an option for your own progress. By the way, I want to recognize that people are saying hello in the chat. If you haven't already, please do. And then in Q&A, we've already answered one live question. Please keep them coming and we'll answer it as we go. This is the advantage of calling into these webinars, even though you can always listen to the recording afterwards. So here, this one is a quite an interesting set of data. Here, we asked people, what their key challenges were. And you can see, not unexpectedly, limited resources is at the top of this list, right? Engaging everyone and not knowing what to measure the next to are also pretty common ones that we see across the board. So you're not alone if you're experiencing these challenges. And the ones as we go down are, they tend to then, be not as common necessarily, but certainly very important ones. The one that I want to highlight here for a moment, and we can share maybe some stories there too, Maritza, is, it may not be on your radar, but finding out how employees really feel on an ongoing basis, is reported. And frankly, I think it's underreported because I think people don't realize sometimes the importance of this. We make a lot of assumptions. We're great as human beings. We all do this in our daily lives, and workplace is no different. We assume we know because we send some, pulse surveys, or we have annual, the good discipline about doing annual or even quarterly surveys. But you know what, those are all very good things to do. But when you think about it, if you ask people, if you send them a survey, you're only asking them what you thought to ask them. And they're only telling you what they think about it at that very moment when they're responding. So really, there's a whole host of things you could have asked, which you didn't think to maybe include. And there's a whole host of things they're thinking or they're feeling throughout their workplace experience that you may have never thought to ask them. So how do you access that? That is where it really comes down to having a safe environment. How do you provide a safe environment where everyone feels that they can share 24/7 when they are having an experience that's worth sharing, or they have a question or idea? We had an example recently, in the last year or so, where right around Juneteenth, there was one of our customers. They had a safe space. They're one of our customers. So one of the features that you can take advantage of is a safe digital environment where people can be anonymous. And so the person asked the question, one of their employees asked the question anonymously about Juneteenth. This was about 2 days before Juneteenth holiday, which, as most of you know, I'm sure this audience of this webinar are aware that it's been a federal holiday now for a couple of years. And But this organization was not aware. They had provided an unpaid kind of ability for people to take that day off if they wanted to. But there was a question about why, with all the focus on the E&I, why this federal holiday was not recognized by the company as a paid holiday. Again, it was anonymous. It was 2 days before that. To their credit, and we really are delighted when we see this, their leader read this. They consulted with us. We chatted about it, and then they decided to respond the same day, at the end of the day. And they had decided by then that they were not aware, frankly, that this was a federal holiday, and they decided to actually grant that as a paid holiday for the organization. Once they did that, there was such a huge amount of trust and sense of belonging and sense of inclusion from everyone, not just those employees who were maybe particularly interested in this, who had initially maybe started that conversation, but from everyone. There was a broad sense of goodwill and trust and appreciation for that was generated, and it went a long way. And frankly, they told us later that if they hadn't had this ability, they would have not thought to ask this. And the person who came forward and asked the question anonymously probably would have not had other means of sharing that. And yet it was something that was really a great benefit for employees, and also for the organization, and for the leader, who really got a lot of kudos for reacting and responding so quickly to something that was important to the employees. I know you probably have some other stories you could share, Mirza.
Yeah, I remember one customer, one of our clients, using our Safe Place platform, put out there, they wanted to know more about the benefits and what really people wanted, and perks like added holidays or volunteer time off. And they were considering making some changes to the benefits package and wanted to see what people were thinking at that time. And they got a lot of response, but they were surprised because the responses that they received were really nothing to do with, like, as you said, Sonya, the survey that was taken 8 months ago. Things had changed since then. And it led to a better benefits package and also a better experience for employees, because they felt like they were part of the decision-making process. So they felt that they were included and they belonged. And it was a safe place where they could say really what was on their mind and what they thought in terms of the benefits. And I know that a lot of organizations, they don't have this safe place. They use like a Slack channel, but it's not anonymous. And so I think a lot of people won't bring anything up or ask a question for fear it's gonna come back and there's repercussions. So I think that having a safe platform like this is a great communication tool for leadership and employees.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I remember that some of the options that were in that case that they were considering for perks would have cost more than what they ended up doing. So again, this is an example of where as leaders, as employers, we may do things that we think are needed, but really finding out what's on employees' minds and what their real needs are sometimes can be a more cost-effective even solution. And so it's really important to do that. Moving right along here to this next piece of it is diversity hiring. Of course, a lot of organizations are focused on this, and as evidenced by here, over 80% have some diversity focused talent sources, so events, job boards, and so on. But then what's interesting is that only 37%, a little over a third, require a diverse candidate slate. This is really, it started with the Rooney Rule type requirements, these are really as important as any other aspect for diversity hiring. And so if you have, some sources, if you're serious about getting results, it is important to require a candidate slate. We are aware there's some sometimes some backlash. People talk about, yes, but then, we just, maybe people are just having a candidate slate that has some token, person of color or gender diversity on it, and then it doesn't get the results. And to me, that's just, that doesn't happen from what we see in our customer base. Doesn't happen that often. Once in a while it might happen, but frankly, that's just an organization hurting themselves and spending energy to require something that they're not serious about, and that really shows other cultural issues within the organization that should be looked at. But largely, this sort of thing works in my personal experience. I also asked for this, and you'll be surprised. It actually has a good effect, and many times without any further requirement to hire more diversity, just requiring a diverse candidate slate, it achieved the outcome that we wanted without any other intervention and other requirements. So Maritza, you want to add to that any?
Yeah, well, Sonya, as I said before, if we don't measure and track progress, the work isn't going to get done. And so by using our office analytics, we can really slice and dice the data, and we can look at, for instance, why are women of color dropping out of the interview? Are they dropping off at the interview stage or at the offer stage? Where are they and why? And so this helps us make recommendations to our clients for corrective action in their process and for better outcomes.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you pointing that out, by the way, that, just looking at the whole pipeline and having analytics around that is another key strategy that's really important, because sometimes people just keep increasing, like, let's go to more sources, let's have more job fairs, let's go to more HBCUs, or whatever they do to increase their diversity hiring, but then they're not getting the acceptance rates, or they're not getting, during the interview process, people are falling out. So knowing where that's occurring is really important to address it. We have a question. Thank you for the question about defining the diverse candidate slate. I apologize, I should have done that earlier. What we mean by diverse candidate slate is that you indicate that in the selection, in the hiring process, right, in the whole recruiting process, that the people that come forward as, the set of, if you will, the down select, you usually, come from a big set of applicants and you down select to a smaller group, and that smaller group that then goes through interviews and so on should have diversity. And this is not one size fits all, right? And this is what we advise day in and day out with all of our clients is, what should that be, right? There's no one right answer. It really depends on the organization. If you're an organization that is operating in or serving very diverse communities, let's say you have a certain percentage of people of color or a certain percentage of, LGBTQ plus community, or whatever it might be, or genders, then you might find out that you are not reflecting that diversity of your customer base or your just the communities that you are operating in. You might decide that you want to increase a certain diversity in your workforce. So depending on that, then you say, for example, we're operating, I'll just use my city of LA, we are over 50% actually, Latino representation in our city. And yet, if we were operating, here, especially some parts of the town that are more diverse, or we were serving customers in that community, but inside the organization, we had little or no representation of Latino or Hispanic, then that would lead us to say, okay, then in the slate, there should be more people represented, at least, if you bring forward in the final selection of, we're going to talk to 6 people, let's say, right? You would say 1 or 2 of them need to be, so that's the slate, right? The slate of the the interview slate. You say that, there needs to be representation of what we are looking for to ensure that. I did that when we were operating outside of the city of Detroit, and in our leadership roles, we had very little representation of people of color, where the city of Detroit was majority at that time, a huge majority, about 80% African-American and Black. And so we had no such representation, in any of our leadership. So we made that a rule, and certainly in our manufacturing operations, we ended up, by just requiring an interview slate that was diverse and had representation of Black and African Americans, that we ended up improving that significantly over time, which also correlated with improved performance, by the way, and employee satisfaction. So all kinds of good things can happen when you put your mind to it. And again, as Marissa was also saying, measuring it and understanding where the issues are. Again, thank you for the question. Don't let us go through and say anything that you need more clarification on. So this is a good, this is the data. Again, there's a lot more data, but this is the extent of what we thought there would be time to share here. So we do want to now share, a bit on the recommendations. So we've talked about all this data. What do we do? What do we do with that? And what are some of the recommendations we would make to you? So for that, I'm going to talk about a few of these, and Marissa can help me here too. One of the things that's really important is not only just to get results, but to get sustainable results. This was my personal experience, as kind of my pet peeve is, we made progress when I was leading D&I for a major Fortune 500 company over about a 6-7 year period. While we made good progress while I was there, once I left the organization, there was, a lot of it was unraveling, and it wasn't because the organization was not behind it. We had just not built it into the infrastructure, into the DNA. And so what we found that you really have to go beyond statements and training and surveys and so on. You need to really have that actionable DEI strategy kind of written down and with, specific objectives and what you're trying to get done. And then that becomes part of the, what everybody starts doing, as you go forward. Even if a specific individual is no longer there. The second really big thing here is you have to, we have a process, we call it the ACT process, and we'll show it here very briefly after this slide, but it really starts with, aligning with the D&I strategy with the business priorities, and then connecting, the C is the ACT process, ACT, align, connect, transform. And the connect phase is really that phase of getting executive buy-in and encouraging active leadership engagement in this process of implementing the strategy. So that's, these are, I know they seem hard, they really are not that hard. And we certainly have a proven process that gets this done in the first 30 to 90 days, really, of any time that we start working with a team. And really, please don't get disappointed that, we don't have time, we already strained for resources. Improving your workplace culture is one of the single most effective ways for improving a lot of things, not just performance, but also your retention and other things that will save you costs. We see 6 to 8 times ROI on any investment in D&I, because it does cut down the retention. It does help with better, more effective recruiting and hiring, and it does improve performance. So explore affordable options for sustained effort, and then go after getting the necessary resources, because otherwise you'll just get frustrated and the results will fall short. Marissa, do you want to, my voice is again going a little bit, would you like to share?
Well, as I've been saying all along throughout this presentation, is data is very important. It tells a story. It's as important as any other department or business in the organization, and other departments use data for their decision making. So it's just as important in this case as well, and it'll save you time and it'll save you money. And then very important is listen to your employees, get their feedback. And that's not just, as we said before, with the surveys and a safe space for them to talk, but talk to your employees, water cooler. If it's a manufacturing plant, walk the plant, say hello. A lot of leadership just stay within their offices, and people really don't ever see them. And then, just focus on the whole hiring process to improve results and change policies, change processes. The data will always help improve, and it's an ongoing journey. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for that. I mean, all of these are nuggets that some of it seems obvious. Some of it is like, yes, I know that, but I don't have resources. Again, I bring you back to the number 3 on here, where there are really affordable options out there, and it will pay off handsomely for you. We have some live questions that we will answer at the end here. Let me just finish with the next couple of slides here just quickly, and then we'll have a Q&A session here the last 10 minutes or so. So this is the proven process that you can deploy on your own, or you can help. And certainly, we do this with all of our customers. It's our standard process. We call it, again, the ACT process, as I described earlier. And what it really entails is align, connect, and transform in this order. And then, of course, on an ongoing basis, they'll be kind of going on at the same time. But when we start with this align part of the process, which is the first 30 to 90 days. And that involves assessing with a couple of survey tools, listening sessions, live, virtual, with leadership, with employees, and then developing this DEI plan. And again, the key nugget here, if you do it on your own or however you go about it, is to ensure that your DEI objectives are linked with your business strategies and priorities. That is very, very important to ensure that you create that link, and the link is clear to everyone, because that's really what makes it a priority. That's what makes it also sustainable over time. And then after you develop this plan, people send an email, they let everybody know, maybe they have a town hall about it, but then it gets forgotten. This connect phase, it's about ongoing connection, right? So that's in the first, after you have this plan, the first 30 to 180 days is really communicating, training if you need to do that, engaging in various ways. Again, that's where technology comes in, is having an environment where people can go and check and comment and engage in it, take their own micro actions. You may have some key objectives and have some actions under each objective that you have assigned, but only so much gets done through those big actions that you've defined under the objectives. You really need to engage the whole organization for every individual to have personal accountability, take their own micro actions. That is the only way you will change behavior. And inclusion is about behavior. It's about, it's about awareness of your biases, and then behaving in inclusive ways. And so this is really important. Again, it's a really second big nugget is to focus on connecting with everybody, because people have different forms, different ways of that they prefer to be engaged. And so, of course, a lot of us are used to digital means of doing that. So that's a very natural way. If you don't have that, you absolutely need that. As Marissa said, anonymity is very important in that. But however you do it, you must focus on this phase. And only then you can really, measuring, tracking, adjusting are very important as you go forward to get results. But that can only happen, the T in the ACT process, the transformation can only happen if you've done the first two parts. We say more about this. There is an ebook about this ACT process, which, as Amber said, she will share afterwards with you all. And then there's an article also as part of being named top 10 in DEI. We had an article that was written about our process and what we provide, and so that can also be shared afterwards if you're interested. So we have a question here about this ACT process. Is in your ACT model, would you say you first must develop a strategic plan and then align, connect, and transform? If so, how would you incorporate feedback on the needs of the workforce into the strategic plan before going into the ACT model? Yes, so good question. So let me clarify. The align phase is the phase of both assessing and developing a DEI plan. Now, it assumes that there is a business strategy, right? So it's true that this is trying to now align the DEI effort and the effort on the workplace culture with the organizational strategy and priorities. So this is where that's all that's required before going into this. So we do not recommend that you develop a DEI plan outside of this process. I mean, that is part of this process, right? So it's kind of like a flow down, right? You have the business strategy and priorities, and then that's really all you need. I mean, every business, every organization, even if you're not a business, you may be an educational organization. We work with a lot of them, and also with government entities, with nonprofits. When I say business, I'm using the term very generically, applying to any organization that is, that is a going concern and has specific priorities and strategy for what they're doing. That's all we need. I mean, for you to be operating, you have such a thing written down probably, or at least, it can be identified through conversations with your executive leadership, which we also include. So that's all that's needed. And then the plan itself is an outcome of the DEI plan is an outcome or a deliverable of the align phase, basically. And that's what takes 30 to 90 days. I hope that clarifies. If it doesn't, please feel free to ask when we go to the live Q&A here in a few minutes. So that's really all we were going to say here. In terms of what's next, we would like to provide, in addition to the ebook and the article that I mentioned, a gift for the webinar attendees here. You can take a DEI survey using a link that, again, will be provided to you as well afterwards. And this is really a really good way to assess and rate your DEI readiness. It's a maturity model assessment. It's fully validated. We've been using it for several years and updating it. And we have industry benchmarks associated with it as well. So we'll give you either a, you can see the badges there. If you do this in 2023, of course, you'll get it for 2023 certification of being aware, focused, progressive, or world-class. And then under that overall rating, there'll be 4 sub scores that you also receive. And this is complimentary for attendees of this webinar. You can also contact us at DEI@ouroffice.io. Our office is one word, no spaces. It's the name of the company, ouroffice.io. For more information on this and webinar discounts that you can get on other products and services that we offer. We hope to see you there, later after this, but for the moment here, we have about 8 or 9 minutes that we can answer live questions. So please feel free to put them into the live Q&A. Or I think
or we can not to cut you off, Sonya, or they can raise their hand and I'll let them come off mute.
Awesome.
So
that's even
if
better.
you have any questions, just throw up your hand and I will take you off mute.
Awesome. I see some written down. If that's okay, I can answer them.
Okay. Go ahead.
Somebody asked to go back to this slide, so I have. And so you can see the information here. Somebody had asked, what does a diversity slate look like if you are a global organization? That's a great question. I actually had a global organization myself. I can speak to that, but we also have currently, many global organizations that we work with. I think the reason this question is so good is that, diversity is in the eye of the beholder, if you will. So I'll tell you an anecdote. I had global operations with a few hundred people in the UK. And I remember that, when I was there for our quarterly reviews, D&I, because I was dual-hatted, I had responsibility for DEI and also had P&L for an organization. And so when I was in the UK for the part of the organization that was there, and we're talking at the end of the meeting, we were talking about their DEI progress, the goals and what they had done. And so I started by saying, so how's the progress? How are you doing? And we were sitting around a big table, it was about a dozen or so people. And one of them, and of course, mind you, I was the only person of any diversity, at least visible diversity. I was the only woman, and everybody else was, white males. And so, and this is in the UK. So one of them said, "Why, we've made great progress. We're very diverse." And of course, I looked around and I said, well, say more, because it didn't seem very diverse to me just looking at it. And here's the trick. Somebody said, of course, we are very diverse, as you can see here. We have English and Welsh and people from Cornwall and Scottish. And so he started just talking about the different, what diversity means to the people in the United Kingdom. So that was quite a teaching moment for me. And so I think when you say, a diverse slate, it really has to, you have to be mindful about it if you're operating in other parts of the world. You are hiring for that part of the world or for customers that are in that part of the world. And then again, I think the key is to define that, what it means for each of the organizations. And again, we certainly have global diversity definitions that we use with our customers, but certainly it will be different than, in a global organization, if you're hiring for the US versus, for European operations or African operations, Middle Eastern operations, you name it, right? You'll have to tailor that to that area. We have another one that says, I think a live one that says, in my experience, that will change from country to country. In Mexico, for example, the focus has been on women, indigenous people, people with disabilities, and to some degree LGBTQ+. And they say, and I mean a very small degree. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, that again is providing another data point on how it can be different. Marissa, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I agree. It depends on the company and your community where you operate and your customers. I really feel like the audits and the assessments with the data will help and also with where your operations are located. And as Sam said, it will depend on that. So it's very customized. I think we have another anonymous question, and then someone in the chat, Sonya asked if we could put the links in the chat, but I believe that Amber will be following up and providing those links with the article and the ebook, right?
Yes, that is
correct. Once I receive the information, I will send it out in a follow-up email today.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we have a last one. What recommendations, suggestions would you give a new DEI leader as the focus seemingly is becoming less focused under the assumption that a lot has been done, and it has because part of the thought process. Okay.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, sometimes people say, a lot has already been done, and we don't need, it's everybody's job, right? I mean, again, if I'm not understanding it correct, please add to this or come off mute if you would like to say it in person. I see it's anonymous, and I appreciate that. So I'll try and answer it to the best of our ability here. From what I understand, I think it's a very, it is happening more now, where people say, well, since George Floyd, especially the last couple of years, we've done a lot. And now it's, everybody understands it, we've trained people, and now it's part of everybody's job. It's in our DNA, or we don't need to. I will say this, and this is from personal experience as well as working with hundreds of companies. It doesn't matter, even if you are best in class. Because if you think of it, any other aspect of business, and I mean this very, very seriously, you take safety or quality. Let's say a company or an organization in any sector is best in class in quality or in safety. They get awards. Does that mean they go and they say we no longer need a director of safety or a manager for quality? No, that would never be the case. That would be the last thing they would do, right? People would laugh at them, and they would be shocked if somebody gets an award for quality or safety and then goes ahead and lays off or eliminates that role. The point is this: things are always changing. The world is changing. Your organization is changing, whether you like it or not. You're hiring people. People are leaving. People, even if they're same people are there, you say, oh, we don't have that much hiring. We don't have that much retention. Yes, but those people are changing. They're getting exposed to the world. Nothing is staying the same. And even if you are the best, you are still, if you don't do anything, you're either going to, just stagnate, and everybody else is going to pass you by, because this is, changing every day, or you're falling behind. So, or other things are happening that you're not aware of. So I hope that answer is adequate. I can talk to you a lot more about this later on, but we do, again, support our organizations a lot of times, to the point of becoming best in class. And then we still work with them. There are organizations that have been with us that renew their subscriptions, year after year, and it's now on year 5 and going forward. So they understand that the goalpost is moving, the expectations of the workforce and candidates and talent are moving. Society is moving and changing, and now more than ever. So hopefully that's an adequate answer. I know that we are coming up on the top of the hour, and we insist on being on time. I want to thank you all again for your attention. I want to thank Amber and the Center for Diversity. Really appreciate you all inviting us, and hopefully this has been of use to you all. And thank you, Marissa, for joining me.
Well, thank you, Sonya. Thank you, everyone, for participating and asking great questions.
Thank you very much. Hopefully
Thank you so much, Sonya and Marissa. I will, as soon as you get the information out to me, I'll get it out to everyone and make sure that I have your contact information included, so they can connect and ask as many questions. I do see that there are some questions that did not get answered. However, I will get all that information out to everyone. Thank you again so much. We look forward to working with you in the future. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.